And the Trump administration will stop issuing employment-based green cards for 60 days to limit competition for jobs and protect American workers.
On to coronavirus news. 4 new COVID-19 patients in Hong Kong has brought the local case count to 1,033.
About 300 travelers are also expected to stay at a Kowloon hotel tonight to await their coronavirus test results. Kenneth Chu reports.
The city's latest coronavirus infections are all imported cases from England. The youngest of them is a 2-year-old who visited the UK with his family from February 3rd to April 12th. On returning to the city, authorities collected a stool sample from the child, which tested positive for COVID-19. Now being tested at Alice Ho Min Lane Nethersall Hospital, the boy has not displayed any symptoms so far. Also treated there is another female patient who was diagnosed again after having supposedly recovered. Despite her low viral count, authorities will continue to test and monitor the 37-year-old.
Now we are following the international standards. That means the patient should have the specimen for consecutive 2 negative results, which in between 24 hours. We are going to review the not just the standards, everything including the treatment, the management of these kinds of patients in the near future.
So far, more than 670 people have recovered, while 8 patients remain in critical condition. Starting today, passengers arriving by plane in the city during the afternoon or the evening are required to wait for their coronavirus test results at the Regal Oriental Hotel.
The travelers are whole and test. They are expected to stay there for one night only. So they do not have to pay.
Those with negative test results will be released to observe a 14-day quarantine at home. Others tested with the virus will be sent to hospital. Kana Chu, TVB News.
New rapid testing procedures for COVID-19 have been introduced to public hospitals that could deliver results within an hour. As Jackie Lin reports, the new tests could help the city battle the virus.
A grueling 6 hours of anxious waiting could be pared down to just 45 minutes. That's how fast the new testing kits could be detecting COVID-19. Starting today, more than 2,000 of these new kits would be put to use at 10 public hospitals, mainly in emergency wards, to expedite diagnoses of coronavirus infections.
Besides the patients in the A&E department, we can also use this test in those patients who need a test within a short period of time. For example, when a patient has an emergency surgery, we want to know the status of the patients.
Unlike traditional kits, these new ones don't need to test samples in batches, which also shortens times. And it's not just the speed. These brand new kits put less strain on hospital staff. While previous testings require manual work to extract and amplify nucleic acids in the samples, the new ones could detect coronavirus strains automatically. And faster doesn't mean less accurate. The hospital authority tested the kits earlier this month and confirmed the reagent sensitivity is comparable to traditional ones.
After
the first batch runs out, more of the new kits will need to be purchased. But due to high global demands, stocks can only be replenished once a week. In an assuring note, however, she says the stockpile of traditional test kits could still last for another year. Jackie Lin, TVB News.
Mainland authorities reported 30 new coronavirus cases with an infection cluster traced back to a hospital. While most cases are imported now, 7 new local diagnoses emerged in the northeastern province of Heilongjiang. All 7 are linked to an elderly citizen infected with COVID-19 earlier. They either stayed in the same ward with the patient or worked there as medical staff.
Japanese officials have confirmed a cluster of COVID-19 cases on an Italian cruise ship currently docked in Nagasaki. 33 crew members of the Costa Atlantica tested positive for the virus a day after the first case from the ship was reported. The vessel is docked for repairs and has a crew of more than 600, but no passengers. In India, 29 people were arrested for participating in an Islamic meeting last month. Authorities claim to have linked almost a quarter of the country's 18,600 coronavirus cases to that meeting. And for a third day in a row, Singapore reported more than 1,000 new infections, bringing the city-state's tally to over 10,000. Again, most of the new cases were among migrant workers living in dormitories.
With the coronavirus outbreak in the United States getting past its peak, attention is turning to reopening the country. This as U.S. President Donald Trump defended his decision to temporarily suspend immigration to the United States. Get America back to work again. A spin-off from Trump's 2016 election mantra, but one that's gaining traction in a growing number of states. Georgia, Tennessee and South Carolina among several places which are taking steps to get back to business. But business owners in these regions are unsure whether to reopen, and a sign that commerce won't necessarily bounce back right away.
If we open up too early, people are going to start getting sick again. Then we're going to have to go through this whole thing again. And then the economy is going to be worse off for a longer period of time. That's a no-brainer.
Meanwhile, President Donald Trump elaborated more on a temporary suspension of immigration into the United States. The executive order will only bar those seeking permanent residency, not temporary workers.
By pausing immigration, we'll help put unemployed Americans first in line for jobs as America reopens. So important. It would be wrong and unjust for Americans laid off by the virus to be replaced with new immigrant labor flown in from abroad. This pause will be in effect for 60 days, after which the need for any extension or modification will be evaluated by myself and a group of people based on economic conditions at the time.
But not everybody was impressed with Trump's temporary ban.
And when it comes to immigration, immigrants are not the threat to America. COVID-19 is.
Setting aside their differences for at least an afternoon, Trump and New York Governor Andrew Cuomo agreed to work to double coronavirus testing in the state. But with the number of cases in New York declining, Cuomo said a U.S. military hospital ship there was no longer needed.
The topic of the ship came up. I agreed, we all agreed that at this current rate, we don't need the comfort anymore.
Also, the U.S. Senate approved nearly $500 billion in aid for businesses and hospitals.
We greatly expanded the program and walled off $125 billion that will go to rural areas, minority areas, unbanked people. The smaller people will not have to compete with the potbellies to get money because they'll be in their own large separate pool.
Most of the funding would go to boost a small business payroll loan program that ran out of money last week. The rest would be given to hospitals and spent to boost testing for the coronavirus.
Still ahead, the UK to start testing a coronavirus vaccine tomorrow. The world said to be on the brink of a hunger pandemic. And locally, police arrest a man in connection with a homemade bomb found outside a school in Wan Chai late last year.
And a warm welcome back to TVB News. The UK has announced a potential coronavirus vaccine under development, which will be tested on people starting this Thursday.
Britain's parliament has also resumed, but it's unclear how lawmakers will be able to operate under new digital arrangements. Leslie Tang takes a look.
Unveiling major news, the UK announced clinical trials of a hoped COVID-19 vaccine will begin on people this week.
The UK is at the forefront of the global effort. We've put more money than any other country into the global search for a vaccine. And for all the efforts around the world, 2 of the leading vaccine developments are taking place here at home at Oxford and Imperial.
The health secretary said reaching this stage normally takes years.
If either of these vaccines safely works, then we can make it available for the British people as soon as humanly possible.
The government has set aside £20 million for Oxford University and £22.5 million for Imperial College. Meanwhile, war veteran Captain Tom Moore, who shot to fame with his heartwarming efforts to raise money for medical workers, opened a new temporary hospital for virus patients in England. He raised more than $33 million by reaching his goal of walking 100 laps around his garden before his 100th birthday at the end of the month.
Order! Order. The House is meeting today in exceptional and unprecedented circumstances.
Britain's Parliament met to discuss how to get back in business, but mostly digitally. Only 50 out of 650 members were allowed in the chamber. How lawmakers will scrutinize the government now is up in the air. Approving legislation has also been put on hold as they haven't hammered out how to vote remotely yet. The UK has the world's 5th highest virus death toll. Leslie Tang, TVB News.
Amid a drop in virus infections, Austria will open all shops next week and restaurants in mid-May. Meanwhile, Italy says it now has more ventilators than intensive care patients, signaling its situation is stabilizing. Italy has Europe's highest death toll. Some businesses can start reopening on May 4th, but it will not mean a full end to the country's lockdown. Amid rises in deaths and infections, Spain has canceled the running of the bulls in July. The United Nations Food Agency is warning that as the world deals with the coronavirus pandemic, it's also on the verge of a hunger pandemic. In a report just released, it says if immediate action is not taken, there could be multiple famines of biblical proportions within months. Alan Bucknia reports.
The report released by the World Food Programme cites wars, locust swarms in Africa, natural disasters, and economic crises. Beasley said the WPF is already providing food to almost 100 million people on any given day, including about 30 million who literally depend on it to stay alive. But he says that's just a fraction of what's needed. Beasley, who is himself recovering from COVID-19, said if those people aren't reached, some 300,000 people could starve to death every day over a 3-month period. Alan Bucknia, TVB News.
Back locally, police arrested a young man suspected to be connected with homemade bombs found on a slope at Huaiyan College in Wan Chai last December. The 20-year-old student arrested in Sao Ma Ping has been charged with conspiracy to wound with intent. He's allegedly responsible for the design, distribution and supply of circuit boards used to detonate the explosives. Authorities continue to investigate if the devices seized are related to similar cases reported over the past few months. And that is our main news for Wednesday night.
Thanks for watching.
Bye.